people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. An update to a story I talked about in my previous video, Shannon Ryan's next fight. Now, she was supposed to be fighting Emma Dolan in what would have been a battle of the unbeatens, but Emma Dolan has fallen ill, and Poland's own Jasmina Zapotoczna is going to be standing in for her. Jasmina was supposed to be fighting Maisie Rose on the undercard. Maisie is another one of Matchroom's unbeaten up-and-comers, but now Maisie's not going to box on that show, and Jasmina's going to be fighting Shannon Ryan instead. Shannon Ryan, very impressive youngster who sports a professional record, an unblemished record of 6 wins with no losses, no draws, no recorded knockouts, not yet. Her bread and butter is her speed and her athleticism, her movement. Can't say that she's a power puncher, but she is a slickster, and she's quick. Best described as a mid-range to inside combination puncher. Campaigning in the super flyweight division. Super flyweight, that's 115 pounds. That's where this weekend's contest is going to be taking place, and she's now facing Jasmina Zapotoczna, who also sports an unblemished record of 6 wins with no losses, no draws, no recorded knockouts. Similar fighter. They're similar to each other, these two. So the first thing I'm going to say is that Emma Dolan dodged the bullet here. Emma Dolan, who's long and limber, very statuesque as far as super flyweights go, a good long-range fighter, but mid-range to inside, I saw an area of vulnerability that Shannon Ryan could exploit. Emma Dolan, because she's got those long levers, she needs a lot more room to work than a Shannon Ryan. Shannon, in close quarters, she can string together a combination a lot easier and a lot more effectively than Emma Dolan could have. But now, Shannon's not fighting her. She's fighting Jasmina, and Jasmina, like Shannon, she's a mid-range fighter. A busy one. She's been busy. She debuted as a professional in 2022, fought 2 times that year, fought 4 times last year. Looking at the fighter and the circumstances of the fight, this is not a developmental fight. This is not a bring-along fight. This is an acid test. This is a battle of the unbeatens, and Jasmina, she's not a journey woman. This is a different fight to the fight that Shannon was about to have with Emma. Shannon's gonna have to be switched on. She's gonna have to be switched on. Shannon, who debuted as a professional in 2022, fought 4 times that year, 2 times last year. And like I said, Shannon Ryan's bread and butter is her mobility, her movement, her speed, and her boxing. She's not an artillery fighter, she's not a power puncher, but she is fast and athletic. She is. Short and stumpy for the weight, very compact, very sturdy, with good balance. That being said, I expect this weekend's fight to be a more difficult fight for Shannon than the Emma Dolan fight would have been. Because Jasmina bears some similarities to Shannon Ryan. Because Jasmina, like Shannon, is a mid-range fighter, a combination puncher, and she's got some speed of her own, combinations of her own, athleticism of her own. She's put together those good short punches, straight punches, good hooks, mid-range to inside, tight. 2 good legs under her. She's coordinated. She ain't got poor balance. She ain't got feet like a baby gazelle. She can move. No horse in the race here. This is a contest. This is a fight. This is not a journey woman. This is not a gatekeeper. This is another unbeaten up-and-comer like Shannon is an unbeaten comer, like Shannon is a mid-range fighter. I think this is a better fight. It may boil down to speed. Yeah. Who's faster on the inside? Yeah. Who's faster in the pocket? Shannon Ryan or Jasmina? It may boil down to speed and hand speed. It may boil down to inches. Who's got better form? Whose hooks are tighter and more compact while simultaneously being defensible? It may boil down to the subtleties and the little things. And don't forget that this is a late replacement. This is not who Shannon Ryan was originally training for. There are glaring differences between Emma Dolan and Jasmina Zapotoczna, who is a capable fighter. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Shannon Ryan look a little bit more human this weekend than she's looked in her previous outings, because this is not a bring-along fight. This is a contest. It's a battle of the unbeatens, a battle of the mid-range to inside combination punchers, the speedsters, the slicksters, and we have to see who's better at that range and who's better with that style, Shannon Ryan or Jasmina. Look for this on the undercard of the Matchroom Next Gen show this weekend. We'll see if Shannon Ryan makes it through it. She's been looking good so far. Let's see if she can keep looking good. In men's super lightweight news, per a tweet from Michael Benson, I'm sure that most of you have heard by now, Subriel Matias has said he's expecting to defend his IBF super lightweight world title versus Australia's own Liam Paro in Puerto Rico next, seemingly headlining a show promoted by Eddie Hearn's Matchroom on DAZN, as he is no longer with Al Heyman's PBC. Do you remember what I told you last year? Do you remember what I told you on repeat? That as a result of Showtime walking away from the sport of boxing and them jumping into bed with Amazon with such limited resources and such limited fight dates, fighters are going to start to leave. Fighters are going to start to float away because they have no choice. The PBC can no longer accommodate them and they have to fight. They got to go somewhere. And seeing the signs that they're no longer operating at the same level that they used to, with the same abundance of resources in fighters like Jarrett Hurd and Julian Williams, Mark Mixayo, Angelo Leo, all former champions that used to fight under the PBC banner. Luis Ortiz, he had to go all the way to Colombia to get a gatekeeper, a journeyman in the ring, a prospect that they were grooming. Vito Milnicki. All these aforementioned fighters were last in action on small hall shows, non-televised shows, non-PBC cards. A significant reduction to the PBC's operational budget that is resulting in their fighters starting to leave, floating away, and Subriel Matias, IBF champion, is one among them, who I told you they weren't going to give him a Rolly Romero fight. They weren't going to give him Rolly, or Isaac, or Gervonta, or any of the fighters they have at that weight, at or around it. So if he stays there, he's just gonna waste away. It's a shame that Subriel didn't decide to go over to Matchroom sooner, back when Regis Prograis went over there and he still had the WBC title when he still was WBC champion, because had he crossed over sooner, they could have made that fight, that unification match. The title has since changed hands and it's gone to Devon. According to boxing scribe Jake Donovan, I have a story filed that I will post tonight or overnight, told that among the final details being negotiated is Matias signing with Matchroom. The two sides were in advanced talks last year. Matias remained with the PBC for one more fight, which was the Shohan Ergashev fight, but he's now a free agent. Paro is already signed for the fight with Subriel Matias. He's talking about Australia's own Liam Paro, who was last in action on the undercard of Haney versus Prograis. He took on Montana Love. He stopped Montana Love. Look good doing it. Now, can he stop a more devastating puncher with more firepower in Subriel Matias? That's the question. Subriel Matias, who sports a professional record of 20 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 20 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 21 professional starts. That lone defeat came at the hands of Petros Ananyan way back there in February of 2020, which he subsequently avenged over a year later in January of 2022, when he stopped Petros in the 9th round of their second fight, their rematch. He's currently on a 5-fight winning streak, having stopped all 5 guys in his last 5 fights. 4 of the 5 guys he stopped were unbeaten fighters, were undefeated up until they ran into Subriel. He really is on a roll, though he hasn't been all that active, or as active as he could be. He only fought once in 2021, only once in 2022, 2 times last year, and the Shohan Ergashev fight in November was his final fight under his existing PBC deal. He is now a free agent entering into a deal with Matchroom, and I think he's better off for it because Matchroom has more to offer him at 140 pounds than the PBC does. Matchroom has quite a few ponies in that 140-pound show. You're talking about Dalton Smith, you're talking about Richardson Hitchens, you're talking about Liam Paro, who he's said to be fighting. You're talking about a former champion in Regis Prograis. He may not be a champion anymore, but that's still a very good fight. Very intriguing fight between two very strong punchers. As well as what business they might still be doing with Devon Haney, reigning WBC super lightweight champion Devon Haney, who not but a few weeks ago, there were some preliminary talks or some preliminary something between Team Haney and Team Matias that all played out in front of our eyes on the Boxing Voice. Now that Devon and Subriel are on the same side of the street, more or less, can we expect that fight to happen? They're both champions at the same weight. But isn't Devon supposed to be fighting Ryan Garcia next? Yeah, and we talked about that, but I ain't got no faith in Ryan Garcia. I ain't got no faith in those talks. Ryan Garcia is simultaneously the least accomplished, yet the most problematic fighter, the most problematic young fighter in boxing today. And I've no aspirations, no hopes of seeing a fight between Devon and Ryan materialize. Not that I'm excited about that fight anyway, because I'm not. Devon is many levels above Ryan Garcia. That is established. To me, a fight between them is a foregone conclusion, because Ryan doesn't compete at the same level as Devon. You can make the fight, but if you make the fight, I have Devon winning the fight. I don't have any illusions about that, though like I said, Ryan being as problematic as he is, something's gonna go wrong. Those talks, they're gonna fall apart. I don't actually take any of that stuff seriously. The real question is, now that Subriel Matias is on the matchroom side of things, is Bill Haney going to keep the same energy? Will Devon? Will they pursue this unification match? Because it is a somewhat different fight than a Regis Prograis fight. With Regis Prograis, yes, you're in there with a heavy-handed puncher, a strong puncher, but a counter puncher, a guy who waits for the window of opportunity to get off a big shot, a big punch. With Subriel, he doesn't wait. That's where they're different. Subriel Matias is willing to take one to give one, whereas Regis Prograis, he's waiting. He's waiting for the opponent to make a mistake. He's waiting for a window of opportunity that may not open. It's what happened in the Haney fight. Devon Haney, who's a little taller, a little longer, and a little faster, keeping that jab in your face, keeping distance between you and him, and so long as he's pumping out that jab and taking that half step back, you don't get the opportunity to use your power. You're waiting for him to commit to a big shot, a big punch, and when he doesn't do that, he neutralizes your power, takes it away from you, outpoints you. Devon's strategy is most effective against the counter puncher, but against the volume puncher, a pressure fighter, a strong one, a relentless one, like Subriel Matias, who's willing to take one to give one on the predication that if he gets in, he can hurt you more than you can hurt him. That's a fight that can be built. And the way you build it is, if Subriel makes it past Liam Paro, if he does to him what he's been doing to everyone else, then you put him in there with Regis Prograis. The who did it better routine, the who did it better comparison. You could do it that way, or you could try to do it immediately after the Paro. It's your choice. So in a nutshell, it's good news. It's good news all around because good fighters like Subriel shouldn't waste away on PBC Island. Here you have a fighter that's made for television of Puerto Rican descent who can sell tickets in the tri-state area, and those bozos at the PBC don't know what to do with him. Let him go somewhere else. You guys don't know what the fuck you're doing. That's why you got kicked off Fox, and that's why you got kicked off Showtime. Finally, in men's welterweight news, on the heels of his latest win over then unbeaten Pete Dobson, Conor Benn says, if we could make that fight with Mario Barrios next, I'd be over the moon. What passes for a big name, quote unquote, a somebody in today's welterweight division, Mario Barrios. Listen, I'll fight any man, Ben told BoxingScene.com. If it makes money, it makes sense, you know? Not just for me, but for everyone involved. The promotional companies, you know? It's a business, and we want to give the fans the most exciting fights possible. So I think for me, 147 is where I want to capture a world title. Barrios is a name that I've mentioned so many times. If we could make that fight next, then I'd be over the moon to make that fight. If not Barrios, then, you know, we'll see who's there. We'll see who wants to fight us. Last two fights haven't been at welterweight. They've actually been at junior middle. There are a lot of people saying that ever since he got caught with that banned substance in his system, he doesn't look like the same wrecking machine that he used to. He's not racking up those highlight reel knockouts, but like I said, His last 2 fights have been at junior middle, not welter, in tandem with his last 2 fights happening on U.S. soil as opposed to UK soil, a constant reminder that that situation, it hasn't really come to a conclusion, not yet. The NADP, the National Anti-Doping Panel, lifted Conor Benn's suspension, but the BBBOC filed an appeal, and as long as that appeal process is still going on, they won't license him. He's not actually suspended by anybody. He can box in different parts of the world, but if he wants to box in the United Kingdom, the BBBOC won't license him until that appeal process comes to a head, and it hasn't yet. Constant reminder that his last 2 fights have been on U.S. soil, and he's targeting what's supposed to be a name in the U.S., a solid name, in Mario Barrios. I'd like to get out 4 times this year, Ben said, but I know that's not realistic because the fights that we want to try and make are mega fights, so it's hard because the mega fights take time. They need a full 12-week camp, a lot of media, so realistically, I reckon 3 times this year. If I can go in the summer in a mega fight, either against Barrios, a Devon Haney, a Jaron Ennis, Chris Eubank, any of those names this year, in the summer and winter, would be great. On one end, you say that a reigning champion in Subriel Matias just crossed over from the PBC over to Matchroom because the PBC don't have as many resources as they used to, and there are very limited opportunities there for a fighter. Would that same principle apply to Mario Barrios? Would he be willing to go to Matchroom for a fight with Conor Benn? That would be a decent fight here in the United States. I say decent, not box office worthy, not pay-per-view worthy, but decent. His Mario Barrios only really came into the public eye for 2 fights that he lost. Not really a fight that he won. They only started hyping him up after Gervonta Davis beat him, as a means to give Gervonta Davis credit for fighting a 140-pounder, even if it's a 140-pounder that didn't really do anything or beat anyone. That's how he came into public eye. Then Keith Thurman beat him, outpointed him at 147. That's another fight that he lost. He has since rebounded off those losses, and he's currently coming off a win over Yordanis Ugas last year, who was coming off a loss to Errol Spence Jr. the year before. Tack on a year of inactivity, but that's what Mario Barrios is coming from. And he would be a familiar name in the American market for Conor Benn, now that he's fighting here on U.S. soil. A familiar name, but you know, PBC guys, they have a bad habit of pricing themselves out, asking for too much money that does not represent their market value or the market value of a show when dealing with other promotional outfits like Matchroom. So you have to wonder, is Mario Barrios going to be realistic or unrealistic? Because it's not like the PBC is operating at the same level that they used to. They don't have as many fight dates as they did before, as many resources. That's why Subriel just left. Is he going to be realistic or unrealistic? One guy who I think would be realistic, because he doesn't have much of a choice, is a Montestanianis, who to my knowledge is still in a pole position to fight for the WBA title if and when it becomes vacant. That guy hasn't fought in a long time. He's got to be chomping at the bit to get back out there. May not have the same delusions of grandeur that Mario Barrios may have. Because, you know, to Mario, the win over Ugas might seem like a high-profile win, whereas a Montestanianis, he has yet to rack up such a victory over a former champion, and given the amount of time that he's already been out, I think he might be receptive to a Conor Benn fight. For Conor, it would be an opportune time to fight him since he's coming off of so much inactivity. I think there's an opportunity there that needs to be explored.